Good afternoon. Quick one for you all. Joey on the Caribou Weather Dude YouTube channel here. Hit like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. I really appreciate that. Anyways, I know it's been a very quiet fire season in British Columbia so far. No real major stories this summer so far. That could change this week, and there's a number of reasons why. I mean, we know it's heating up. We know that there's low humidex values involved with this heat wave coming. We also know there's a lot of lightning coming later in the week as well. For some regions in particular, the models are starting to get tighter and tighter and tighter on it, but I'm not going to focus too much on the thunderstorms Wednesday, Thursday, Friday yet today. That'll be the next forecast video. We'll get closer. The models will keep getting tighter. Certainly the Northwest looks like it's in for some very strong thunderstorms. Supercell composites are showing the Northwest being an area of concern. Peace being an area of concern, but we're talking widespread thunderstorms after this hot, dry period we're in. We're going to have a lot of new wildfires, folks. This is it. This is the event of the summer's coming. So let's look at the details and start getting ready.
There it is. Oh my God. Anything could happen. Get on! Wow.
I'll watch the video later. Thanks for running up in this.
Before we talk too much about what's going on there, the strongest thunderstorms along the western Cordillera today should be in that Whitehorse to Dawson City area. I know Ivan Coyote was up there having a swim late last night, and a shot of lightning with all nearly instant thunder got them out of the water. Glad you're okay, Ivan. Love you lots. Down in B section here, we could see some pop-up thunderstorms. I don't think these will be very strong necessarily for the most part, so keep in mind, I know Janice, Billy, and some of my friends down there in Nisconlith are going berry picking today, and I said, well, you should be mostly okay as long as you're not underneath one of these cells. They don't look very severe-ish. Maybe produce some hail. Maybe produce 1 centimeter hail. Probably not. Maybe a drop of rain or 10 to 15 mils if you're underneath the one of those cells long enough. Nonetheless, not a big day for stormy weather in British Columbia today, and hey, that's great. So you may have some scattered, non-severe thunderstorms in southern BC today. That may not be the case for the prairies, where look at Area C. You're looking at 3 to 4 centimeter hail, so we could see ping-pongs and whatnot dropping on people down in that area with wind gusts of 90 to 100 kilometers an hour. Is it possible a funnel touches down in some of those areas? Yeah, it's not out of the question. It's not out of the question. Area B as well. I mean, most of the action's on the American side of the border. Some of it's just sort of crossing over a little bit there. Area B, 90 kilometer hour gusts, 3 centimeter hail, and 30 mils of rain, most likely in those storms. You could still see severe throughout other sections, other regions. Like you could see severe in Calgary. You could see severe in Saskatoon. Is it likely? No. It's not like, well, it's not that it's not likely. It's that I don't perceive that there's a widespread severe outbreak going on. That's what they're trying to tell you in the minor threat risk, minor threat category. And just looking at Western Canada right now, air quality warnings up in the far north. There's some fire burning up there. We're going to look at everything here regarding fire now. Severe thunderstorm watch in southern Alberta in some of those same areas we just looked at. Severe watch on the Manitoba-Ontario border. We have a severe storm that's going on. No, we got a heat warning there. Okay, I was wrong. Heat warning going on up in this one sort of section there near Fort Francis. Humidex values near 36 degrees Celsius. Wow, the rest of that is in severe watch, though. This is all smoke in the north, and this is all heat down in Ontario. Heat warning, 38 to 42 Humidex value. Yuck. And then severe thunderstorm watch there as you get up to St. Lawrence on the north side. And then heat as well in the Maritimes. So ingredient 1 for our fire season to wake up in BC is we need the heat. Things are drying out a little bit after just 1 week of it. Puddles that have been there since for a month or two here are suddenly finding themselves drying out fast. So just take a couple days of heat, and it's not even been that hot here in Wells. Like we've gone over 20 degrees a bunch of times, but it's not been anything insane or whatnot. It's been normal summer weather, I suppose. In the 20s here is what I would call normal. You can see how hot it is in Ontario. You can see how hot it is in Manitoba. You can even see that some of those values are pretty warm in Saskatchewan. There you go. So that's making fires stand up. And now we got insane heat across the board in the United States. Okay, we're talking hundreds 100 degrees Fahrenheit almost across the board. Like we're talking high 90s down there. We'll go a little bit further. There you go. 100-degree Fahrenheit across the board. Have you ever seen anything like this? No, I never have. I've never seen anything quite like that. I mean, people will try to tell you, oh, 100 Fahrenheit, that's normal. Yeah, sure. That's not unusual. That's, of course, 100, it's very, very hot. 100 is very extremely hot. And when it's across the board like this, I mean, that is unusual. So some of that heat's going to try to make its way into British Columbia. You can see how smoking incredible hot is in Ontario. Very humid out there. Anyways, BC, going to get warmer this week, so we're watching the heat kicking up an extra gear. Bam, that's even warmer on Monday. Some of those white colors stretching into southern BC. And as we keep moving on out, keep getting warmer. Look at that. Now we're into the nighttime temperatures. Still going to be warm up there. Still warm through the nighttime. So that's when you can tell we're really in the heat, when it's not getting, it's still 13, 14 degrees at night. Again, temperatures smoking, screaming hot across the board. We've been one of the places in North America that's had the crappiest summer so far. And that's got people saying all kinds of wild things. And if you don't look at the bigger picture, you might say, oh, wow, there's the climate change now. I heard it snowed in the Coca-Cola in June. Yeah. And it's extremely hot south of us. Unfortunately, the weather's not let us enjoy it. But look at these temperature values getting into the interior here, seeing some very, very warm days this week ahead. Very warm days, getting hotter and hotter as we get to Wednesday. Extremely hot into the interior. That's going to help kick off our thunderstorm pattern, and it's going to be a big one. So the other dynamic we're looking at this week is not just the heat. As you can see, Saskatchewan, we're going to see fires wake up there. We're going to see our fires in Manitoba wake up. We're going to see our fires in northern BC wake up. So it's not just British Columbia. I mean, these areas have been having fires already. So what we're talking about is the fire behavior is likely to get more aggressive. Whereas BC hasn't got much for fires going on, but with all the lightning coming this week, that is going to change. We have optimum burning conditions coming up. And then we will see a switch temporarily out of this, I would think, by the weekend. But there you can see the heat. And now weekend, GFS seems to think it still stays hot this weekend. So that's anybody's guess so far what comes next. But I think we're going to look at the week ahead at least and be able to surmise. There you can see some of the change there. Be able to surmise a little bit about what we have coming up in the future. And there you go. You can see there's going to be some rain events most likely up there. But I mean, again, now we're talking 9-10 days out. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Relative humidity being the next thing we need to consider for our fire behavior. Fire likes to breathe dry weather. So if we have the temperature is higher than the humidex percentage, then you are going to see crossover fire weather conditions. So as you can see, you get into some of these areas along the Rocky Mountains and whatnot. You're talking extremely, extremely low humidex values. You're talking, between, 0 is almost impossible, but you're looking at well into the 10%, 20%, things like that. And some of that dryness is coming up to us. And there you go, watching it get bigger. See how BC is getting a little bit drier. Dry, a little bit dry in Saskatchewan. Optimum burning conditions up there on Monday again. Now we watch the next day. You see that low humidex value taking into BC. This is what's going to give us, and especially if you have some wind, this is what's going to give us more aggressive fires, more aggressive fire behavior should a fire erupt. Now, there's not a lot of fires active right now in southern BC. So, hey, we can handle some low humidex values and some high temperatures until the lightning starts starting new ones, which in some locations you will have thunderstorms before Wednesday. Wednesday's kind of the go date for a larger outbreak, but there is going to be some storms ahead. And again, we'll talk about that next forecast video, exactly who's getting what. We'll have a quick look today, of course, but we'll look more so, I think, tomorrow to try to have some real specific ideas on, who should be more or less ready. So dry weather this week, hot weather, perfect fire behavior weather, and we have the unfortunate reality of a lot of lightning coming into the province. There you can see the humidex values sort of tail off a little bit there as we get into the weekend. So GFS seems sketchy on whether or not it's going to cool down much, but when you see these humidex values coming up, I would suspect that we'll see a cool down associated with that through the weekend, a little bit of one at least. So where are we at right now for fire weather then, sort of looking ahead? Well, you can see Some of the areas that took rain recently near the Yukon border, near the Northwest Territories border, near Fort Nelson, they took some rain. The indices came down a little bit, and that's been great news for a little bit just to see the fire activity. But still, there's enough smoke being created up there that they got air quality statements. You can see that swath of weather that went through Saskatchewan has drop some moisture on some of the fires. However, a lot of them didn't get hit that much. So we're seeing areas kind of in that northern section, that northern third there, looking particularly dry, northern Alberta and whatnot, having some fire weather. But you look at southern BC, and here's the thing. We're watching southern BC get more and more dry, and we're starting to see that expand into Vancouver Island, up the Coast Mountains, and we're going further up the Coast Mountains to the Chilcotin, and then we'll go further up, to the Burns Lake, Smithers area, and north. Those are areas that we're going to be watching this week because of where I suspect supercellular thunderstorms are going to light off. Now, I think we're going to have some supercells in the Peace later this week too. There's going to be widespread thunderstorms, but these are the areas where I'm looking at supercells probably happening, and why I'm going to focus on this more when we get to that forecast on the storms is because we have had quite a few fires up there over this year. There's still some work being done up there. There's active fires happening. There's not much for active fires anywhere else in southern British Columbia. So who's getting the new fires, which zones? I would suggest Northwest. I would suggest Prince George zones, Caribou zones are all zones that are in high likelihood to have new fire starts. But then you look at what the indices are like in southern BC, any amount of lightning down there is likely to torch one off. We look at our fine fuel moisture code today. Pretty good for a lot of BC still, but we're seeing changes. We're seeing changes to the north. We're seeing the north start to dry out more and more. These are the fine fuels, the sticks, twigs, bits of grass and pine needles and things on the ground. Fine fuels are very dry in the Yukon. Fine fuels are very dry in much of the Northwest Territories, northern Alberta, and we have that area of Saskatchewan and Manitoba that did not take the rain they needed to take. You can see which areas have taken quite a bit of rain lately. So we have the fine fuels are not in the greatest shape in terms of being dry. However, if we cross-reference that with both the Duff moisture code, which we're looking at now, which is that area of soil and organics and whatnot that most of the trees and forests seem to have in Western Canada. You can look at the Duff layer, very dry up to the north, very dry into parts of Alaska, even dry up in parts of northern Canada, although those are fairly dry places, I think, as you go further north at times. You can see that the fine fuels are maybe not that dry yet, and there's heat coming, so they will dry out. And you go a little bit further down, though, and look, the ground isn't that wet at all, actually. It's quite receptive to and of course what happens is dry ground like the dry Duff is going to help dry out the material on top much quicker as well. So you can see the Duff moisture is pretty good in a lot of BC so far, and that's what's going to be changing a little bit. So although our fine fuels and whatnot are a little bit dry in northwest BC, it's not until you get further down into the Chilcotin, down in the coast, down into Vancouver Island, down to southern BC, where you see that layer of soil drying out most especially. And like I say, a lot of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba are in the danger zone there. Let's have a look at the drought code. This is a little more telling because even if the Duff is a little bit wet in some places, you go to even deeper depths and you're finding that, well, things are dry down there and rivers don't have the water they need, and there's a lot of, okay, so the drought code, have we had the rain we need this year? And still, this alarming thing continues in Northwest Territories. This alarming thing continues in Peace in northern BC. It continues in Alberta, Saskatchewan. For all the rain they've had in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, they're in drought status. Northern Ontario, drought status. And even much of southern British Columbia. It's not had the rain this last 4 or 5 years that you needed. And you keep adding some rain, and it's just not enough to really replenish the system. We need like a long trend of crappy weather, which we've had some of that this spring and summer for absolute sure, and that's why the Rocky Mountains look the way they do up and down, and the Caribous here look the way they do. We're definitely not in drought here. Northern BC looking pretty good along the coast until you start getting to that southern area. So when you look at the build-up index, that's like taking everything and putting it together, the ISI's initial spread index, which we haven't looked at, and drought code and Duff code and fire weather and all these things, put them all together, and we get kind of the buildup index, you know what we're at. So this is what we're looking at today, right? We're going to have a look now where we're going with this hot weather. Now we can see the problem areas. We see the problem areas. They seem to be consistent along the every map we look at. The problem areas are consistent. Now we're going to jump to the 30th. That's Wednesday. That's when our thunderstorm activity really kicks off. And what's our fire danger looking like in BC at that time? Unfortunately, the area that I expect to see the strongest thunderstorms seems to be one of the worst places for fire danger that day. Okay, this ain't good. Jump ahead to the 30th. That's the day I expect our thunderstorm activity to commence. That's the day where we're looking at our buildup index. We're looking at the overall condition of all our indices coming together. We've seen a decline fast with the hot weather, with the dry weather. It's going to suck the moisture to everything very, very, very quickly. And we're finding ourselves looking more and more and more in danger of a widespread wildfire outbreak this week in British Columbia. Prepare. Plan. I'm not telling you this just to try to get some cheap likes or clicks or subs, you know, that tomorrow when you realize, oh, that guy's full of shit, I would lose anyways. I'm telling you this for your own good, well-being, safety, our planning. The province of BC now needs to be ready to see fires popping up all over in a large lightning outbreak after a period of heat. This is how so many of our fire outbreaks start. It's no different what's coming this week than it was in 2017 and 18 when the fires kicked off. Not much different than 2021 when we had the heat dome, and then suddenly there was lightning storms everywhere coming out of that. In fact, some of the lightning storms came out of wildfires that were already burning, pyrocumulonimbus style. Right, we saw in 2023. We saw this same thing happen a couple different times in the summer in different scales. We saw the same thing in 2024, lots of heat, and then a cold front comes through, triggers a whole bunch of thunderstorms, a bunch of instability comes, starts a whole bunch of new fires. At that time last year, we saw Jasper burn down, nearly, and things like that. So the buildup index is very concerning to see that as we come into that middle of the week, when that fire outbreak seems imminent with all the lightning, we're looking at our fine fuels. They're drying up fast in the interior. Look at these indices, look at these colors. If you are on the very northern part of BC, maybe, lightning will have a hard time sticking when it starts a fire. My concern with the coming thunderstorm pattern is it starts off very dry. The thunderstorms will not be high precipitation thunderstorms. We'll talk about why and all that, I think, again tomorrow. We'll just have a quick look at the reality of it before we leave today. In terms of like what's active on the board for fires in BC, there's a few dots out there that are suspicious, but I mean, all in all, it's pretty quiet. I'm sure if you looked at BC Wildfires site, you would see a bunch of fires out there that are listed and reported. I don't know how many fires are currently in the province. I haven't checked that today. I'm sure that's the kind of stuff I'll be looking at more as we get into this. What's going on in Saskatchewan right now? So this heat that's coming, your fires are not going to settle down much. You took a little bit of a rain story this week, but all in all, Saskatchewan is very, very active right now. Very active north of the La Ronge. That fire is still going. I don't know why it's taking so long for the images to get clear. A lot of these fires are the same fires we were looking at in the past, the same fires we were looking at before. They're showing activity today. They're taking off. They're doing their thing. I mean, all these red dots are showing you today's activity for certain. We're seeing today's activity really picking up. Great to see that Flin Flon's not having a lot of activity, but as you go further north, there's communities up through a lot of these places. Here's a lot of activity today. Very hot in Manitoba. Manitoba's seeing some real action on their fires. This is going to continue with this heat moving on through. We get the heat in BC, and then it moves eastward. So they're not gonna see much of a cool down at all between now and things getting warmer. They have lots of thunderstorms coming through to start new fires. That's another concern for them. So looking at Western Canada, we're really coming into a new period of fire behavior, fire activity. August tends to do that for BC. We would have hoped to see some of these fires sit down, take some rain and whatnot, and struggle a little easier or harder than they have. That's not been the case. And then we go look at the Northwest Territories. Fires are reacting to the dry and warm conditions up there. And these are some of the ones that are producing the smoke right now. As you get into BC, we've had just so much rain. And here's the good news. Actually, is that when all this moves on through, I think this area is going to take more rain at the end of it. So we're going to start our storm pattern quite dry. And then as it works its way out, I think that we're going to see a larger rain story again in the Peace and Fort Nelson area. So that's some positive news for those fires, for people up there. I'd really like to see the storms just keep pounding in up there. And look at this, over in Alaska, there's still some fires that are being pretty active. So just to revisit quickly, what we'll be looking at this week when we get into the actual weather forecast is that, this low pressure is driving the warmth up into BC, but it's also at some point going to drive instability. That some point for sure is on Wednesday, when we're going to see a large outbreak of thunderstorms in the province, looking more and more like this northern section everywhere north and west of Prince George for sure is going to get into it. And again, we're going to go through all this more and more and more in the next forecast. But look at this outbreak of thunderstorms. Who is going to get missed? Tell me that. Who is not going to see some of these thunderstorms over this 3-day period? So that you watch it peter out on Wednesday. Big show. You wake up on Thursday to new fires burning. We didn't take that much rain in any of this. And wow, what happens on Thursday? A wider explosive thunderstorm outbreak across the province. And it seems like the Chilcotin maybe takes a little bit of a miss. But I mean, man, this sector of northern BC, I'm really concerned about. That's one of the areas I'm concerned about. But I think as we get closer and I get better info and better data, we will have a lot of areas to be concerned about. Pretty sure of that. And then it starts to make its way eastward. And you can see on Friday, we're still up and down. And I mean, this has been changing slightly since the last bunch of model runs, but it hasn't gone away. So the shape of it's changed. Who gets how much and where and what has been changing. And into Saturday, another day of thunderstorms. That's a change, right? And then Sunday, we finally start to see it move out of BC for a little bit. These are all forecast changes that, aren't incredibly surprising. So I hope that just kind of gives you an impression of why we are going to be seeing a new wildfire outbreak in the province of British Columbia. Why 2025 we are not going to escape without a wildfire story, my friends. I wish it was otherwise. If you own a fire company, if you're on a fire crew, start preparing yourself, start doing your laundry, start packing your bags this week. Because if there's enough fires starting, ministry is going to need your contract crews to be ready and available. Make sure your equipment, if you're a machine operator, make sure that your water tenders are serviced. Make sure that your plans ahead of time, if you're living in areas that are susceptible and prone to fire, especially if you're in that northwest sector, be prepared. Have your sort of plans made ahead of time. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to help you understand that we could be seeing the event of the summer so far. Okay, that's it for today, everybody. Hit like, share, subscribe. Please consider donating to the channel. I'm doing my best to try to be your weatherman. I tell you, I'm like surviving on like a salary of $20,000 a year basically at this point, or less, and a regular meteorologist is making like 120 grand. It's like I'm doing my best to try to be everything everyone needs me to be with very, very little amount of resources. It's been tough. So become a channel member, join Patreon, give a super donation if you could, or at least just keep coming back. If you aren't gainfully employed, I don't want that kind of help from you. Just so nothing makes me feel cringier about myself than when someone who's 70 is like, well, I can't really afford to give you much from my pension, but then don't please, because I'll hate myself if you do. But if your business is making money planning around my forecast, hey, come on, help the dude out. Okay, see you next time. Bye.